Good morning, Beaumont. Well, today is the second day of early voting, and maybe the third day. I've kind of lost count, but the point is you now have an opportunity to get out there and early vote. In the old days, I would have said, don't vote early, because that's how they figure out how much of a fix they need to put in at the end. But these days, I'm less worried about that than I am about how the votes are actually counted. Because the voting machines print out your ballot so you can see exactly who was voted for. This is an advantage. We're happy with that. But the problem is, then these ballots go into a canvas bag with a zipper. Now, it's a canvas bag with a zipper, so they put a lock on the zipper to make sure nobody can tamper with the ballots. But here's the problem. These canvas bags are very thin, easily cut with a razor knife. And there's no serial numbers. So there's no way to know that the canvas ballot box that you as the election judge sealed your ballots in is the same canvas ballot box that actually made its way to the counting center. This is a problem. I mentioned this to Cindy in Houston, who is the head of the GOP over there, and she didn't really seem to be that concerned about it, but I am very concerned about it because I believe the counting center is where they skew the vote. After all, how do you come out with the fact that Harris County, and Houston in particular, is a very conservative city that has always had Republican leadership, but ever since they changed the voting system over there and the Democrats took it over, now Republicans never win anything. There is only one elected Republican in the city of Houston at this time, and he is on Commissioner's Court, where he's outvoted 3-1 on everything. So how do you analyze that? We have a county judge, for instance, who her first ever real job was being the county judge. She got that job when I think she was 26 when she got elected to that position in the first place. Now, she's got some mental illness issues, but she appears to be dealing with them somewhat, though she has blown up a couple of times in city council. But nonetheless, that's who is running the thing. You seriously believe that Houstonians want some young girl with no experience managing a multi-billion-dollar budget? What about all the judges, the Democrat judges, that as soon as the police do nab somebody and put him in jail, these judges let him out, often with no bail? How can that work? And how does it happen unless the election is not secure? And my friends, the election is not secure. We need to be very, very concerned about how the ballot count is being done. We need watchers in the ballot counting center, just like we need watchers in the polling place. And we need to eliminate these zippered canvas bags, or if we're going to use them, they need to be serial numbered, silk screened, not spray paint, because we need to have something that is tamper-proof all the way through. So yes, go ahead, get out there and cast your vote. We need to do it. And never, ever, under any circumstances, ever vote for a Democrat, because they are not trustworthy and they will destroy your cities. So get on out there and do it. Now this. Well, yesterday was the No Kings rally, and here's the good news. It apparently worked, because I don't see any kings anywhere. I mean, Chuck Schumer thinks he's a king. He shut down the entire government, but it's not really helping them any. In fact, according to the recent polls, the government shutdown has actually boosted Donald Trump in the polls. At the same time, Democrats, which started at the bottom of the well, their approval rate has gone down. Now, on average, if you look at the American population, they have about 13.2% that claim to be Democrats now. So take that into account. But it was really a hilarious thing. One of the major news media outlets used a picture of the Boston Marathon from several years ago on their No Kings story, which is a blatant lie, because they had to do that because virtually none of the No Kings rallies had any attendance whatsoever. So take that into account as well. And then you have Karine Jean-Pierre, the cute little black lesbian teddy bear, who has her book out that says, "Now the truth about Biden can be told." That's because she refused to tell the truth about Biden while she was there, getting a very handsome paycheck as the alleged press secretary. Of course, the difference between her and the current press secretary was she had this huge binder that was tabbed with the answer for everything. So it was a wonderful thing for her. All she had to do if she needed to answer a question was look through the binder. If they asked this question, here's the answer. I love the fact that our current press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, a young 26-year-old, really, really cute, she answers every question in detail, and I've never once seen her open a notebook. Isn't that amazing? So anyway, on Monday, KJP reminded us that she's still KJP, Greene Jean-Pierre. She said, if you pay attention to these things, you've probably heard the book of the notorious book Independence, A Look Inside a Broken White House, outside the party lines. She promoted it by announcing she was no longer a Democrat. Well, I think that's a pretty good idea. It indicates she has at least some common sense. But it wasn't until she realized that the party was a dysfunctional mess of factional disputes, and none of the factions were even worthy of consideration, but because they'd done poor old Joe Biden wrong, well, anyway, he wasn't really the pellucid, sentient lump of flesh completely divorced from the affairs of the nation state he allegedly ran that you saw on the debate stage back in June 27, 2024, Greene said. He was a man of and for the moment, even if he didn't seem to be in the moment or even know that there was a moment. But she's going to tell you all about it now because her book is going to be released. Well, it was released yesterday, and you can get it for only $29.49 on Amazon. You'd be surprised to learn that while the book isn't technically available to the public until Tuesday, advanced copies have gone out, and the media so far is not terribly convinced by her line of reasoning. Speaking of which, I'd appreciate it if you'd buy my book. Go to Amazon, type in Doc Greene, don't forget the E on the end of Green, and Worship. Doc Greene, Worship. Hang that up there and get my book because my book is way better than hers. I could give a rundown of the reactions, but I think it's probably best to put it this way. She went on CBS Monday, and of course CBS is the only news network that is properly named because, well, if you watch them, you will CBS. Anyway, she was there to promote the book, but she got slammed by Gayle King, a woman of color, precisely known as someone generally unkind to those peddling revisionist versions of recent history to make the Democrats look better, and for claiming not to notice the president that she served wasn't quite all there. In one particularly damning clip, she talks about the fact that Greene Jean-Pierre was even on the plane. Joe Biden, I can't remember a thing, kind of reminded me of Hillary when she was testifying before Congress, and her brain had turned to jello and she couldn't remember anything. I don't know, it always wonders me that none of these Democrats seem to be able to remember a thing, but yet they continue to seek leadership. Why didn't the members of his inner circle speak up when many believe that Joe Biden was in obvious decline? After I read that, I wrote, how? You even write, Greene, you were on the plane with him going to the debate and you didn't see anything wrong? In case you've forgotten, though, about Greene Jean-Pierre's powers of dissembling from her time in the James Brady briefing room at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Greene said, when we were on Air Force One going to the debate, you've got to remember campaign people were on the team. His family was on the team. I actually was one of those rare trips where I didn't actually see him until after the debate, even though I was on the plane. I was mostly there to eat the steak and lobster. So really, I want everyone to know I take this question incredibly seriously. I do. So seriously that when she was asked how she didn't notice that Biden was not quite there, what everyone actually saw on the stage, the first black woman to serve with a black president, she wants to know that she was in a different part of the plane on that day. Next question. She said, I was his White House press secretary, which means I had a role that saw him practically every day and traveled with him for more than 95% of the time. And King said, and you saw nothing? We always said we're not going to say, oh, he didn't age well. He aged and he poked fun at it, and we always owned up with, when age happens, you get older. Well, Donald Trump is not a young man, but have you noticed the way this guy handles meetings? And this guy does meetings all day. On an average day, Donald Trump puts in a full 12 to 14 hours. So this doesn't include the days when he's traveling and riding on the plane for 8 or 9 hours just to get there. And then he gets there and he does what he does. And then he gets on the plane and he goes another 8 or 9 hours to the next meeting. That's the president we currently have. And the president we currently have gets out and has a press conference every time he gets off the plane and answers all the questions that are directed at him. Well, you never saw Joe Biden do that, did you? And when we talk about mental acuity, again, I take this very seriously, Greene said. I never saw anyone who wasn't there. I saw someone who was always engaged. Oh, yeah. Well, we happen to know that at least for the last 2 years of the presidency, Joe Biden was incapable of choosing what color socks to wear, let alone what he had for breakfast. Running the country was never a part of it. He had people to do that. She said, I saw someone who understood policy, who pushed us on the policy and always understood history. And there were times, and I tell you the story, there were times he would call me to the Oval Office and I'd be like, oh no, because I knew whatever he's going to ask me was going to be very direct about a story he had read, how we're pushing back or how we're pushing a message forward. Well, her former boss example, I'm surprised she didn't claim me as the first president, the first octogenarian white man to serve with a black woman president. Given that she's releasing what will hopefully be the final Now the Truth About Biden Can Be Told book, and now when everyone in Biden's orbit is trying to launder their own reputation and resume through the books that'll hit the remainder bin faster than the Rosie O'Donnell diet, or how to remain a relevant painter after your dad leaves office by Hunter Biden, at least we've established one thing. There's no coherent way to explain how Joe Biden was coherent when he was running for another 4 years in the White House. Thank you for that reminder, Karine Jean-Pierre. But we all know that Joe Biden was selected, and he was selected by the power that runs the Democrat Party because he would be the figurehead and he would stay out of the way and let them run the government the way they wanted to with the auto pen. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.